Hey guys, it's Hunter and welcome back to another video. So Sweetwater's sent me a guitar and there's something off about it. Something offset about it. For those of you who haven't unsubscribed, we're gonna mod the crap out of this thing. Alright, so this is another episode of the long-running high-integrity mod series. Basically, Pimp My Ride, but for guitars. Finding cheap instruments and seeing just how far we can take them by modding them to within an inch of their life. It all started a couple of years ago when I bought a $30 pink Strat copy from China and decided, you know what this needs? $600 worth of upgrades. It was pretty janky, and the sticker on the pickguard written in beautifully broken English was perfectly fitting. Satisfaction competitive. High integrity. And it's been a little while since we've done one of these. So I partnered up with my friends at Sweetwater. That's a retailer I get all of my stuff from, so it's awesome that I get to work with them. They even include candy in the packages. I love you, Sweetwater. So they provided the guitar and all the upgrade parts. At the end of this whole thing, this with all the upgrade parts will be going to one lucky subscriber. So stay tuned until the end for more information about that. But in the meantime, introducing the Ship of Theseus candidate for this episode, a Squier Mini Jazzmaster. Now, why? just why? Why is this guitar getting a $400 makeover? Well, actually, a lot of reasons. First off, and most important, Squiers make for great mod project platforms. They've got good bones, the build quality and playability is really good for the price. Generally, the shortcomings are just down to the components. Your tuners, your electronics, all the user replaceable stuff. Swap those out and add a little bit of TLC, you get an affordable, great playing guitar customized to your specs. Second, and no, actually I lied, this is the most important part, it is a ridiculous looking guitar. 22 3/4 inch scale length, the bridge and pickups are normal sized, but with a miniature Jazzmaster body, so the entire scale looks off. Love my pastel colors, and this is just a bright blue children's guitar. It's just gonna be very amusing when this thing becomes an absolute metal machine whose specs puts higher end guitars to shame. And third, the guitar that made me fall in love with fenders and offset shapes was Jim Root's Jazzmaster. Such a cool guitar, but I just haven't been able to come up with the money for one. So for a third of the cost, we're gonna take matters into our own hands. That is correct. We're gonna make our very own Squier Jim Root Mini Jazzmaster. That's bright blue. It's gonna be metal as f***, I hope. Alright, so the first thing we gotta do is disassemble this thing and get it prepped for surgery. It's all disassembled. Well, kind of. I haven't taken off the neck because I'm not replacing that. But all the components are now removed so we can see what we're working with. And I'm not gonna lie to you, Squier has surprised me here. This routing is surprisingly clean, and they've used shielded paint for all of it too. For the bottom of the giant swimming pool cavity at least. Over to the pick guard, there's some shielded tape where you'd expect it to be. Mini pots, so no surprises there. But you see that? Those are Korean alpha pots. Not gonna lie to you, I was totally expecting to see these super cheap mini pots that we found in my Squier Bullet Strat, in the Hello Kitty Strat. Not reputable, good quality pots. That was not in the script. Okay, Squier, I see you putting effort in. Regardless, even if it is impressive for a $170 guitar, it's still not as good as the stuff that we're gonna be putting in here. So let's remove the components from the pick guard, and then we can start to upgrade the crap out of everything. Alright, cool. Not gonna lie to you guys, not a lot of the original parts are staying. This big mess of a pile is all the stuff that we're not gonna use, and this much less sizable pile is the stuff that stays, and most of it is just screws for the pick guard. So first things first, with these intensive high integrity mod projects where we're doing a complete overhaul, I like to start with the headstock. There's absolutely no reason why, it's just so much is getting replaced. It's nice to have a process, and for some reason I always start here. First thing, we're starting with the unsung hero of any mod project. The Nutmasters to the rescue again. We've got a GraphTech Tusk XL nut. Permanent lubrication, hell yeah. Strings don't get stuck, really helps with tuning stability and resonance compared to a cheaper plastic nut. It's a massively overlooked upgrade because it's not as big or as sexy as new hardware, new pickups, but bang for buck, this is the best way to get the most out of any low-cost guitar. Makes it more stable, more reliable. It's 13 bucks on Sweetwater. If you got a cheap guitar that will not stay in tune, I'm telling you, get a GraphTech Tusk nut. I went with the black color because we're making a, well, kind of metal guitar, and the black color would fit the vibe. As with all good blanks, the Nutmasters have put extra length and height on the GraphTech XL. Guitars are also different, so there's not a universal fit. So as you can see, that's way too tall and way too wide. Got some sandpaper here. It's a really boring process, so with the magic of editing...
A few moments later.
Actually, while I'm doing this, I realized there is one thing that, one little tip that I want to share with you guys, you know, if you're doing this for your first time or whatever. So the way that you want to measure this out, basically, you can set the nut into the guitar and then make marks with the pencil and then sand it down to where the marks are. That way you're not constantly, you know, like taking it out, sanding a little bit, putting it back in, seeing if it fits. Sounds like a really obvious tip, but it's one that I didn't really think about until my luthier Wendell was like, hey, you know you can make your life easier, right? Anyways, back to the fun task of sanding this nut. And for the height, I've kind of just eyeballed it for now. It's definitely still too high. Like, really, you don't want to do the nut as your first step. You want to get the strings on, make sure it's the right height. Like, you don't want to get it too low, otherwise your strings are hitting the frets. So at the end of the whole process, I'll go back and redo it as I'm setting up the guitar. The reason I started with it, though, is we're actually using a lot from the Nutmasters, and I wanted to put them all together. Like, this is the Nutmaster section of the mod video. Next part we're going with are GraphTech string trees. These help with the string angle at the headstock, make sure it's enough to keep the strings in the nut slots. Of course, a lot of budget guitars have cheap metal string trees that work, but the strings can get caught on them. So GraphTech have another low-cost solution for this. String trees made of the same black Tusk XL material, permanent lubrication from the Nutmasters everywhere on this guitar. Let's install that now. And the last bit of GraphTech to go onto this guitar are String Saver Original saddles. Now, I had a choice with this guitar. I could have replaced the whole bridge, but it didn't really seem necessary. It's just a metal plate bolted to the body, so instead, we're just gonna replace the saddles. Now, these are made of a special material that not only reduces string breakage, but also increases sustain and tuning stability, and of course, they're self-lubricating. Excellent. Alright, cool. So we've installed now all the, we'll call them the unsung hero upgrades from GraphTech. Right, like a nut is obviously not as sexy as a big-ass Evertune, but all these are very important upgrades if you want to improve the stability and performance of a more inexpensive guitar. It's a fancy way of saying it'll make your cheap, crappy guitar not so crappy. Okay? Plus, these subtle aesthetic touches, like the black accents, these little details make the guitar look a lot cooler, a lot more metal, which is good, because that's what we're going for. Or at least as cool as a bright blue mini Jazzmaster can be. We move. So now the next thing we're gonna do is the tuners. Now when it came to the selection, this was a pretty easy choice. Now there's a metric load of great aftermarket tuners out there, but for this project, there was really only one choice. We're going with the tuners that Jim Root uses on all of his guitars. No Godot, no hip shot, but the surprisingly hefty Fender locking tuners. Seriously, it's kind of ridiculous how big and heavy they are. Like, they might throw the guitar balance off. But again, it's what Jim Root uses. That's the theme of this guitar. We're staying the course. Plus, they're really high quality components. Well, that's annoying. So on the right, we've got the stock Squier tuners. On the left, we've got the new Fender locking tuners. You can see they've kind of got the same concept when it comes to the mounting design. You've got the two little pegs there that hold the tuner in place. Clearly, though, they're not the same size, so the fit is not correct. And you can see the holes clearly don't line up, but it looks like the new ones are big enough where they go so far past the original holes that I just need to drill new ones for the tuning pegs. Like, the housing will cover the old holes anyways. If they end up being too close, though, and the holes start merging, I will have to plug the holes, and that's really not hard to do. I use bamboo skewers and super glue. I just don't want to do it 12 times.
A few moments later.
That's a pretty tight fit. It's a pretty tight fit now, but it works. So, yeah, we should be good to go. Okay, so locking tuners, Graphtech upgrade package all installed, hopefully solving all the biggest issues that come with a miniature guitar. Now it's time for the most fun part, making this sound like a Jim Root guitar, or at least as close to a Jim Root guitar as we can, given the 22 and 3/4 inch scale length. So of course, we have to go with Jim Root's signature EMG Demonum set. In my opinion, this is one of the most interesting EMG sets to come out in recent years. Unlike most EMG pickups, they're based on the retroactive platform. It's a different preamp to the classic 81 and an open coil design, so in general they tend to be a bit brighter. The retroactives were introduced to bridge the gap between passive and active. They still require a 9-volt battery, but Jim Root liked the dynamism of the regular versions enough to create his own signature, which is supposed to sound closer to the 8160 than the rest of the range. Can't wait to find out. Nice, so they're mounted, they fit directly into the pickguard as a drop-in replacement. The only weirdness I ran into is, for whatever reason, so this is one of the screws that came with the EMG set, and the thread size was actually just slightly too large. It just wouldn't fit in the hole. And I know Luke is about to message me a "your mom" joke as soon as he hears me say that, but yeah, I ended up having to use the stock screws. Super weird that they would include screws in the kit that don't actually work with the pickups. Bizarre. Okay, now wiring up EMGs is super easy. They've got the solderless system, the wiring diagrams are really good. I mean, these connections literally just slide onto each other. It's like Lego. That's why I always recommend them if you're not comfortable with the soldering iron or it's one of your first mod projects. You just have to do a little bit of soldering from the switch to this little connection module here. So all the connections and everything, that's super easy. I'm not worried about that at all. What I am worried about, though, is since we're giving this guitar away, I need to make it look nice. And my wire management is notoriously garbage. So we've got the big swimming pool route here. This module can go in between the pickups. Now what's cool is that EMG have done this so it's Velcro with sticky tape. You can literally plant it anywhere on the pickguard. And so since we've got the big swimming pool route, it'll go right here in between the pickups. And probably more like this or like this. Not really sure yet. As I said, my wire management is pretty bad. So I guess I'm gonna start making the solderless connections first, see what everything begins to look like. And then once I've got like a lay of the land, I guess, I can plant this down permanently and cut wire to fit. Somehow my wiring jobs always end up looking like IEDs, so we're gonna try to avoid that this time. Let's see what happens. That's not terrible. I wouldn't say it's professional either, like I would never pay me to do this, but I've been learning some stuff from Wendell and this is actually pretty alright. I mean, it still looks kind of sketch with all the wires going everywhere and the exposed 9-volt battery, but there's not much I can do about that. Just plugged it in and test it and it works first try, so I'm calling this one a success. Now, you'll notice I haven't done anything with the bridge grounds, like I haven't connected them to the circuit. That's because if you didn't know, EMGs, you don't actually need to ground it to bridge. So technically we could chop all this up, but I'm gonna leave it in there. That way the winner of this guitar can put passives in, like Seymour Duncan's or, you know, stock pickups, if for some reason they're so inclined. then the last little thing we're gonna be doing here is adding some heavy ass strings to this project. The idea being we can have a down-tuned mini guitar. So for this project, I've decided to go with the Dario NYXL 12 to 60s. For reference, I usually play 942s, so these feel like absolute cables in comparison. I do not think it's possible, even with these, to get down to Slipknot drop A or drop A sharp tunings, but my hope is with how thick these boys are, we can get the mini Jazzmaster down to drop C with decent string tension and intonation, even with a 22 3/4 inch scale length. And then we can use the drop pedal to get the rest of the way. Might have to do some filing on the nut slots to get them to fit, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It says they're good for drop C on the packaging, and we are going to put that to the test. Alright, project complete, and it's kind of beautiful. Let's hear what it sounds like in a full produced mix with the orange rock reverb. Then I'll meet you back here for some raw tone samples, a recap, and some final thoughts. Oh yeah, and giveaway details. Okay, so this turned out way better than I'd expected in a lot of ways, and also worse in some ways than I'd expected at the same time. So let's talk about it. When it comes to the overall concept, I mean, it was a dumb idea from the start. Turn a mini Jazzmaster guitar into an absolute metal beast inspired by one of my favorite guitarists ever, Jim Root. Essentially a Jim Root mini Jazzmaster. And massively appreciate Sweetwater wanting to be part of the fun as opposed to telling me to fuck off. Now, unfortunately, because these new Darios are so different to accommodate the stupidly low tuning, there's not really going to be a before and after tone comparison. This is essentially just a completely different guitar now. I have a whole demo video on the stock version if you haven't seen that yet, link in the cards, but for this, we're just gonna focus on what the guitar sounds like now. And in terms of the sound, I am so happy with how this thing turned out. Running through the rock reverb with these massive string gauges and EMG demonums, it's kind of ridiculous how huge and Slipknot-y this tiny guitar gets. As soon as I plugged it into the orange, it was Slipknot riffs all day, and it's so much fun. It also looks great, all the black accents with the nut, the string trees, the saddles, the pickups with the blacked out pole pieces. It's a shame I wasn't able to get a black pickguard for it, but since it's a mini Jazzmaster body, it would have had to have been a custom job. I realize now I could have gotten black control knobs, maybe a black switch tip, but that's okay. I still think it's got a great blend of 50s Fender and metal going on. Banging out chonky riffs on this thing is so much fun. Now for the not so great stuff. The new Fender locking tuners are awesome, but they are so much more massive than the original stock tuners, and there's a huge amount of neck dive now, if you care about that. The neck shape is solid, it's your standard Fender Modern C, and I've run down the sides of the neck with a rough file. The fret ends are much better. They're still not the smoothest, but they won't hurt you either. The biggest problems I'm running into with this guitar that I thought might present issues are intonation and fret buzz. Now, with the short scale, I thought the massive strings would help with intonation, and they do. You still have to be careful with how hard you pick, though. Get too aggressive, and the pitch drift is it's not good. But man, with the huge strings and the short scale length, the fret buzz is insane. I've tried my best. In fairness, it could just be that I suck at setting up guitars. And maybe both would be better if I tuned up from drop C, increased the string tension. But man, this is a Jim Root inspired metal guitar. Anything higher than drop C would be a crime. So overall, I am calling this project a success. We succeeded in what we came here to do. Took a bright blue mini guitar worth less than 200 bucks, gave it the high integrity treatment, and turned it into a mean-ass metal monster. Only took Fender locking tuners for $49, Fender Infinity strap locks for $15, EMG Jim Root Demonum pickups for $230, D'Addario NYXL 1260s for $13, Graphtec Tusk Nut string trees and string saver saddles for a combined $77, coming to a grand total of $384. Thanks again, Sweetwater, for your generosity to accomplish it. But compared to the $1649 for a Fender Jim Root Jazzmaster V4, and this is cuter, yeah, it's got some problems, but it's still a success. So all that said, I am very sad to have to see this go. Way more sad than when the project was just a concept. But I said one of you was going to get it, and so one of you is going to get this beast to add to your collection. All you need to do, of course, be subscribed to this channel, and then comment down below what is your favorite Slipknot riff. I'll get it started. Mine is the intro to Before I Forget. And I'll be choosing a random winner from the comments. It'll be announced in a future video about 2 weeks from now, probably in Agufish, so make sure you've got the bell ticked for notifications, because if you miss the announcement, it's going to someone else. Now, we have to ship this to a US address, so if you live elsewhere on the DL, make sure you've got a US-based friend or a PO box we can ship it to. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this crazy video. It was a lot of fun to do. I'm gonna spend what remaining time I have with this mini Jim Root Jazzmaster playing the crap out of it. Thanks again to Sweetwater for sponsoring the video. Social media, merch, and Discord server links are in the description. As always, thanks so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I'll see you for the next video.